elk hunting trip, and uh, he didn't come back.
Oh,
My grandfather came in one Sunday afternoon and took my mother into the living room, and my sister and I were at the kitchen table,
hmm
and uh, he had this expression on his face. It was just awful. So
hmm
my sister and I went in to see what was going on, and just at that point was when my mother screamed, and
Oh,
that's when he told me that or he told us that he had been shot.
hmm.
And the stock did very well.
Yeah,
Uh, it just blew up, and so that kind of allowed me to do what I'm doing today
yeah,
without, you know, it's just, I don't have to, um, maybe I shouldn't say this. I don't have to do these for a living.
yeah.
Uh, I of course charge, but uh, and actually I kind of feel guilty once in a while,
Production.
a little unnerving to
Yeah,
have all that.
yeah.
And
Well,
and
you're the
so
focus of this thing, and they're never the focus, right? They always want the focus to be the rest of the family.
right.
So it's
So
unusual for them.
yeah. So as we get into their life stories, you can almost watch it all melt away to where it just becomes a conversation between them and me.
Did you know there's a technology that's actually an app on your phone that uses sound waves to tell your brain what you want your brain to do? We had a young man that was on a guest on our podcast, the Mike Litton Experience, who had a traumatic brain injury. He was sleeping 3 hours a night. He's using NewCalm now and he's sleeping more. Go to newcalm.com, Mike15 promo code. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. Mike is passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
Fred Farmer, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited to have you on with us. Like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So, with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born and go all the way up to today. And then we want to talk about these amazing things that you're doing to help people continue their legacy and record it. Thanks for being here, bud.
Well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. I appreciate the invitation to speak to you and your audience. I started all my adventures in Nampa, Idaho,
Okay.
and Nampa is in the southwest portion of Idaho, and it's about 16 miles west of Boise. To
Okay.
give you a frame of reference there. I spent my first 16 years there.
Mhm.
My dad was a conductor on the Union Pacific Railroad,
Mhm.
on a freight train, and to help with groceries, he was a big hunter fisherman up there in Idaho,
Oh.
and he loved to do that. He went out with some of his buddies one trip to go on a elk hunting trip, and he didn't come back.
Oh.
My grandfather came in one Sunday afternoon and took my mother into the living room, and my sister and I were at the kitchen table,
Mhm.
and uh, he had this expression on his face. It was just awful. So
Mhm.
my sister and I went in to see what was going on, and just at that point was when my mother screamed, and
Oh.
that's when he told me or he told us that he had been shot,
Mm.
and he it was with it was someone in another hunting party,
Yeah.
and this guy had it was up on this ridge, saw the bushes move, and he shot into the moving bushes, and that was my dad.
Oh my goodness.
So anyway, it was when I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
Um, I was devastated. After going through that, I began to realize the next few years, I started to realize that I knew everything there was to know about life.
Mhm.
And when I turned 16, I decided I wanted to leave home.
Mhm.
And I had some friends that had moved to Palm Springs a year earlier,
Mhm.
and so I went to visit them over a summer, and I was invited to go live with them. And so my mother was smart enough and loved me enough that she signed all of the paperwork to allow me to live there, and I didn't miss any school, so everything turned out pretty well.
I bet that was a warm summer.
Yeah, yeah. Or, pardon me.
I bet that was a warm summer.
That was quite a culture shock going from Nampa, Idaho to Palm Springs. Little more action in Palm Springs than Nampa, Idaho.
Yeah.
Um, I graduated from Palm Springs, and then I decided I would go into the junior college there, College of the Desert,
Mhm.
and spent a couple of years there, partied my brains out, and as because of that, I didn't do real well.
Mhm.
This was during the Vietnam era, so I decided I should probably do something with my life, a little bit more constructive.
Right.
So as opposed to being drafted, I decided to join the Air Force.
Oh, okay.
So I was in the Air Force 4 years, and after that, I got out and decided in that same mind frame of reference, I decided I would go to college again,
Mhm.
and to ease into that, I used the GI Bill,
Mhm.
thankfully, and went into Grossmont here locally
Okay.
for a couple of years. Got an AA degree, and then I got an AA degree in telecommunications and film, and
Mhm.
then I enjoyed it, so I went to San Diego State and graduated from there.
Awesome.
So
What made you end up in San Diego from Palm Springs?
I had some friends that had moved from Palm Springs to San Diego,
So you followed them?
and by the time I got out of the Air Force, they were living here in San Diego. So
Gotcha.
I moved here with them.
So could I ask you a couple of questions?
Absolutely.
So what was your favorite thing about growing up in Idaho?
Um, at that time, it was the people, and
Mhm.
just like I said, my dad was an outdoorsman, so hunting and fishing. I
Mhm.
never actually had the chance to go hunting. Um, my dad, on my 12th birthday, this just before he had gone hunting,
Mhm.
he had bought me a deer rifle and a 20 gauge shotgun. So
Mhm.
he did take me out, and we did some clay pigeon shooting,
Mhm.
and he would take me out target practicing with a deer rifle, and then we'd go fishing, just to do a whole lot of fun things up there.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
So we
So
were pretty close.
so in high school, did you have a favorite subject?
Um, Actually, I don't think I really did. I wish I could tell you one, but not really. No.
Did you have a favorite teacher by chance?
Um, None that I could speak of.
Okay. It's all right. Growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
Most influential. Probably my sister.
Yeah.
She was 5 years older, and I she was actually my hero throughout my life.
Mhm.
She had unfortunately uh, started smoking when she was younger, and she ended up, of course, having lung cancer.
Hmm.
And I had gone up to Idaho. She was still living there, and I was living here. At that time, I was working at Qualcomm, and the job that I had allowed me that I could work pretty much anywhere.
Mhm.
And so she had the two top lobes of her right lung taken out. And I went up there immediately after that. And I took care of her for a couple months. I'd go in uh, first thing in the morning at 7 o'clock, and then I'd leave 7 o'clock that evening
Yeah.
because she had animals. Of course, I'm in Idaho.
Mhm.
She actually raised a bunch of sheep, and she had cats and dogs, and so I went home at 7 o'clock. I went to her home at 7 o'clock and took care of the animals, and then went back to the hospital after that, and then she had complications from that operation, and she wasn't able to eat solid food. So it ended up, when I took her home, I had to feed her through a peg tube, but she was the kind of person that was a fighter.
Yeah.
And the doctor at the time of him telling me of the initial operation said that those with lung cancer, the best prognosis is 5 years. 20% of people with that will live 5 years. And I had talked to my sister about that, and she said, "Well, that's ridiculous." And so she fought. She had radiation. She had chemo. She fought through it all. Came out on the other side healthy.
Hmm.
So she made it through that, and then a few years later, I'd say about 10 years later, she came down with bone cancer,
Mhm.
and so I had the opportunity to take care of her again, and
Yeah.
I talk her into moving in San Diego, and
Mhm.
so it was a little bit easier.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm kind of drifting off
No,
to.
you're fine. You're fine. This is an amazing story. I'm admiring your sister. So
She was incredible. I mean,
yeah, she was. Yeah, she
she
was.
just, like I said, if I had a fraction of her bravery
Yeah,
uh,
determination, the whole thing. I mean,
exactly,
to look death in the face like she was and go, that's ridiculous, right?
yeah,
I mean, that's, it's something, there's something to be said for the mind, and there's something to be said for determination and tenacity, and, right? Um, it's just awesome. I just love that.
and
So,
as I said, she loved animals, taking
yeah.
care of all these animals, and with her sheep, she had probably about 20 head of sheep, and she had them sheared,
Mhm.
and that was about it. She never sold them. After that, they were 20 pets actually,
Wow. Yeah.
and so they died of old age, and she had cats and dogs that were strays, and she took care of them. So
Yeah.
just an incredible human being.
Yeah. Sounds like it. Sounds like it, man. I mean, just amazing. So, so you go to Grossmont, so you come back. Okay. So let's go back. So in the Air Force, number one, why did you pick the Air Force?
Um, I thought that maybe it was something that would require a little bit more intelligence
Okay.
than than just being a grunt out in the field and doing that type thing. And so
I
I
heard the other day that that's the way Air Force, that people that were in the Air Force, that's how they view the other, right? That's how they view their branch versus the other branches of the military. And I understand that the other branches don't necessarily agree with that, but I
No,
get it. I mean,
not at all.
no, I get it. But
I go to the gym, and my gym buddy is a retired Marine,
yeah,
and when I told him I was in the Air Force, I said I was in the service too. I was in the Air Force, and he said, "I thought you said you were in the service." So we have to take that. We have to take
Oh,
that.
I like this guy. Yeah, that sounds like a Marine, right? Once a Marine, always a Marine, right?
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
A great
Okay.
guy. Great
So
guy.
I love that. That was great. So what did you do in the Air Force?
I was in electronics. I was in radio relay and worked with communications equipment.
Gotcha. So you're in for 4 years. You
Yeah.
make the decision to get out. What precipitated you to leave?
I wasn't military type
Yeah.
person.
And you didn't have to get drafted, so you were basically in a good place.
Yeah, yeah,
Tired of being told what to do.
yeah. And so how I got into telecommunications and film is my sister again
Yeah.
was impressed by seeing some show on TV of how people would produce videos and that type of thing.
Yeah.
And so she told me about it, and of course that was a trigger
Yeah.
of me, I guess, trying to impress her.
Oh, sure. Your hero. Come on now.
Yeah. So
Right. Got to bring it. Got to bring it.
right.
That's right. So 4 years in the Air Force, you get out of the Air Force, you go to Grossmont for a couple of years, right? You move to San Diego, go to Grossmont for a couple of years. What was the single most important thing you learned at Grossmont?
I just really enjoyed the video production
Yeah.
department,
Gotcha.
and just it's just a lot of fun. And then of course San Diego State. From there, I continued that and just kept it going. Now,
Gotcha.
when I got out of San Diego State, I you get a little closer to the people in the media
Mm-hmm.
as you get close to graduating and the local media.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't real impressed with the lifestyle of the people that I had met,
Mm-hmm.
and so I decided to go into still photography. I was doing some freelance work in still photography. I was shooting shooting jobs of freelance of interior designers, that
Mm-hmm.
type thing, and so I was doing pretty well, but I wasn't much of a salesman. So I decided I wanted to do something different to pay the bills. I went into Thrifty Corporation, and at that time they owned Thrifty drugstores,
Right.
big five sporting goods, Crown Books on the West Coast, Track Auto up in LA.
Mm-hmm.
So I went from store management up to the corporate office in LA, and
Wow.
I became their corporate photographer up there for 5 years,
Okay.
and I I met a young lady when I was in San Diego State that I took a fancy to, and I talked her into hitching up with me,
Yeah.
and did that just before I moved up to LA, and I didn't want to live in LA, so I commuted for 5 years, kind of back and forth. But then I ended up living with her sister's family during the week, and then come home on weekends,
Yeah.
and we did pretty well.
That's awesome.
So and then I from there I was able to land a position at the time General Dynamics Electronics Division,
Mm-hmm.
and I started producing their marketing and proposal videos, and then as General Dynamics started selling off their divisions, I was able to jump over to Space Systems from Electronics Division just before they did the sale.
Yeah.
And with the Space Systems, I got more into marketing, and I got into special events and that type of thing. And in doing that, it allowed me to go to the Cape and was involved with special events around launches and that type of thing. Space Systems at the time built the Atlas launch vehicle in the upper stage, the Centaur for the Atlas and the Titan, and so I got to see a few launches of Atlas and one of the Titan, and I had taken my family into Florida one time where timing was right to where we got to see a shuttle launch. So that was so very, very lucky.
That
And
had to have been cool.
as they sold they sold his Space Systems to Martin Marietta in Denver, so a lot of people lost their jobs. And I eventually ended up at Qualcomm, and there I continued doing events, trade shows and events, and managed that for their chipset division, and which was just incredible because that allowed me to go travel all over the world, and it was just.
Did you know there's an app that has no side effects that allows you to use sound waves to tell your brain what you want it to do? It's called newcalm.com, and it's amazing. It literally uses sound waves. If you want to tell your brain to go to sleep, if you want to tell your brain to recover, if you want to tell your brain to put you in peak physical state, if you want to tell your brain to focus, if you want to tell your brain to take a power nap, you can do all of these things and more with newcalm.com. Go to newcalm.com today, promo code Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off.
Just pretty awesome.
That is pretty awesome.
It was a lot of work. I had a really nice budget. I had about $1 million annually to spend on that function, and so they did things pretty well.
Yeah.
So
you enjoyed working for Irwin Jacobs?
Oh, Irwin Jacobs is the most incredible human being you'd ever want to meet.
I met him one time.
Yeah,
and he was the nicest guy.
He is just incredible. He's a genius in not only the technology but sales.
Yeah.
He had to convince the world to not go to the GSM technology, which is the direction they were all going, and to convince them that CDMA technology was the better, more functionable, and they could more efficient.
Yep.
And so he had to actually build these divisions that built the infrastructure for CDMA, and then he had to build phones that would work on CDMA. So that's how he kind of got all that together.
Yeah. So I'm out in Borrego Springs at the visitor center in Borrego Springs, right? And we pull up, my wife and I, we were out there just on a little vacation thing, a couple of days. And we pull up into the parking lot, and there's a red SL 550 sitting there, or SL 500 sitting there. And it's really pretty red, right? And the license plate said CDMA on it.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, you know what? Irwin Jacobs is here. I said that to my wife. My wife goes, "Who's that?" So I explained to her who he is, right? And I recognized him from like photos in the Wall Street Journal and all that kind of stuff, because I'd never been anywhere where he was. And so I walk into the visitor center, and right around the corner there he is. And so I walked up to him and shook his hand, right? And he goes, "How in the world did you know I was here?" And I said, "Well, who else has an SL 500, a red SL 500 with a license plate that says CDMA on it?" He goes, "Oh." But man, what a nice guy. Really nice guy.
He's kind of, since I was in the marketing group, I was around him a little bit more. And so you could only have respect for that man. To talk to him, you tell him, or you would call him Dr. Jacobs.
Yeah.
He would want you to call him Irwin.
Yeah.
He's just that kind of guy.
He really seemed real down to earth to me. and didn't know me from Adam, right? And I always, well, I just went up to him cold and introduced myself, and we got into a conversation about why they were at the visitor center, and why they're in Borrego Springs, all this stuff.
Yeah.
So, and I even asked him how he liked his car. It's like, so anyway, it was really cool. We had a great time for like 10 minutes talking, but he couldn't have been more gracious if he tried. So he definitely won a fan over. And I came back to San Diego, and the next week I bought a Qualcomm phone. True story. Remember the Qualcomm phone that had the earpiece that slid?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I bought one of those. It's like, we're doing this, So anyway, it was fun. So you're at Qualcomm for how long?
I was there for 14 years.
Wow.
And I was there at a good time.
Yeah. No kidding.
When the stock did very well.
Yeah.
It just blew up. And so that kind of allowed me to do what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
Without, it's just, I don't have to, maybe I shouldn't say this. I don't have to do these for a living.
Yeah.
I of course charge, but and actually I kind of feel guilty once in a while because I'm not a hard sell kind of guy with particularly with these. The very first one I did was my own mother.
Yeah.
Since my father was killed when I was 12.
Mm-hmm.
When my first son was born, she came down to visit her first grandbaby, and I sat her down and I got the old VHS camera out and sat her down and started asking her questions about my dad, and then we got into other stories about family members, and I thought after that, I think other people might like to have something like this done. And so I thought, well, after I get out of this corporate gig, I'm gonna get into this a little bit more. And over that period of time, I did a lot of family, friends, that type of thing, and they're so much fun to do. The stories that people have are just incredible.
I do have a question for you, and I know Qualcomm was a very big company, and I get all that. But one of the people that worked there from almost day one is a friend of mine. She was a client, and then I met her. I financed her first house, and then we became friends and all that. Do you remember Rachel Rutherford?
I'm sorry, I don't.
It's okay. I know it was a big place. It's okay. She was one of my favorite people in the world, and she worked there for a number of years, and had stock options and all that kind of stuff, and did okay, working there, and during that saw a lot of growth. Like they were adding buildings. If you remember, they were adding buildings every other month. I mean, it was crazy.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, the growth was just insane. But that was also a credit to Irwin because he had this vision and the world adopted that vision, right? I mean, there were third world countries, Fred, and I know you know this, but there were third world countries that had no phone lines run. They had no any other way, and they had this CDMA technology that could take them from the Stone Age to current modern communication. And it was wireless, like it was a phone with no wires, right? I mean, it was amazing the things that they could do with these third world nations that brought them into sort of the modern fold, if you will. And I admired the way that he treated people and the way he was, with people or is with people. I admired his vision even more, because he really changed the world. And man, when it caught on like there was no tomorrow, like wildfire, and anyway, you remember all that, but it was wild.
The investment that he had made, his philanthropic activities in San Diego is just unbelievable.
Yeah, everywhere you look,
there's a
Jacobs Center everywhere you look. Yeah, it's true. It's absolutely true. So after your first son is born, you start thinking, I think people would really like this. Like somebody would really like this if I provided this, right? Now, how long ago was that you started doing this for people?
That very first one that I did of my mother
Yeah.
was 38 years ago,
Wow.
because my oldest boy is 38.
Right.
And
Wow. That's
that's how
incredible.
I'll always remember. Is
Absolutely.
he was just like 2 weeks old when
Yeah.
my mother came down to visit.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know.
See, the cool thing about what you do is you do a version of what we do, right? We literally get people's life stories, and having you record people like you do and getting those interviews down, right? So that you have so that there's a legacy there for future generations and that type of thing. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a bigger deal than most people realize.
I use the tagline that says, and it's an old quote that no one really knows where it came from initially, so it's a more or less anonymous. But it's when an old person dies, a library is lost.
Yeah,
and so that's so true.
it's absolutely true.
All these stories are disappearing as people pass away.
Yeah.
And there are the most incredible stories that I've met. Some people that you just can't imagine some of the things that they've done with their lives.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing about it is it's a learning experience, because it's experience that they've had that now you can learn from, right? That you don't have to go out and make the same mistakes, right? And you can learn from the wisdom that they've accumulated over time. And it's taken an entire lifetime for some of them to accumulate it,
Mm-hmm.
So talk a little bit about your service. First of all, what's it called? And then secondly, what sort of packages do you provide, that kind of thing?
I decided I would call it Fond Reflections Video.
Yeah.
And what the process that I go through is once a family, and my market is more of the children of the seniors.
Mhm.
I've done presentations at retirement communities, and the older people come up to me and they say, well, my generation come up to me and say, I don't have anything in my life worthy of putting on a video of all things.
Right.
They like the idea, but they don't think highly enough of their own life that they would think that it's important enough.
Welcome to humility.
It's just the opposite, because the family really wants to have these stories.
Yeah.
And so the as I say, the market is more the children of the seniors, and so I try to use these my clients, which are the children, to convince the seniors how important it is for their own kids, which would be the seniors' grandkids and that type thing.
Right. So when you do that, do you sit with the kids and say, hey, give me some examples of things that you want to hear?
What I do is once everyone agrees to having this done, I set up a pre-interview meeting, and in that meeting, and that's with the interviewee. And in that meeting, it's mostly me talking about me.
Yeah.
I want them to be comfortable with me asking them all these questions.
Yeah.
We actually do the interview.
Yeah.
And then the second purpose of that pre-interview meeting is that I have been putting together a list of questions that ever since of my own mother, I had written down everything after I did that, written down everything that we had covered, and then over the years I've been putting together all these questions for each era of a person's life, going from ancestors to just progressively going to their grandparents, their parents, them growing up on the farm or in the old neighborhood, some of the school age years, stories about their siblings,
Mhm.
how they met their spouse, having children of their own, some of the careers they've had throughout their lives. If they were in the military, some of those stories, travel adventures. These end up being about 3 hours in length to
Yeah.
cover all that information. Most people wouldn't want to sit for 3 hours to watch a video of almost anyone.
Mhm.
But the fact is that if you have all these stories recorded, you
Yeah.
can go watch it half hour at a time.
Yeah, no, it's true.
But you have them.
So a couple of questions. Number one,
Yes.
how do these people feel after they finish doing this?
The seniors themselves, I've always said, because they do take a little bit of time to do, and because we're working with seniors,
Mhm.
I say, if this gets a little bit too much for you today, if you don't mind, I'll leave my equipment here. We'll come back and we can do it tomorrow.
Mhm.
And I have never had to do that, because the seniors, they start getting into their lives. They start remembering these stories. It's really funny, because when we start an interview, they you can see on the video they're a little stressed, and they've got these lights on them. I put a little lavalier mic on
Mhm.
their shirt or blouse, and I use two cameras, so it's a little
Little bit of a production.
little unnerving to
Yeah.
have all that.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
and
you're the
so
focus of this thing, and they're never the focus, right? They always want the focus to be the rest of the family.
right.
So it's
Well,
unusual for them.
yeah. So as we get into their life stories, you can almost watch it all melt away to where it just becomes a conversation between them and me.
Yeah.
And they will oftentimes get so deep into some of these stories. I would say probably 70% of them get into a story where they'll actually start tearing up.
Yeah.
And I joke with people, and I say I don't consider myself successful unless I can make somebody cry.
Yeah.
So, but they're just so much fun to do, and I get wrapped up in, because these can go over a period of time to where I'm I'm getting information from the family, uh, with those questions. Getting back to one of your questions, the questions that I leave with them to go over in my pre-interview meeting. I leave with them with these questions, and those questions are kind of a roadmap. We're not going to go through every one of the questions that I've written, but what I ask of the family and the interviewee is to write down on the left side of the page, uh, of or a different page, to give me little memory ticklers, that is going to allow me to ask a question to get into the subject of a family favorite story,
Yeah.
something that I'm not going to know anything about, but the family, is going to want to keep that story forever.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
even after they're gone. So even as many times as they may have heard the story, they want to hear it again.
Gotcha. So how do you feel when you do these?
I feel so great. I
Yeah.
just I get into it just as much as because I'm trying to get into their lives as they're explaining their lives to me, and so I'm trying to envision everything that they're going through, and which helps me in trying to ask additional questions from what they're telling me.
Yeah. And of course, you never get emotional.
Actually, I have, yeah.
Yeah. Just a little.
Yeah.
So if somebody's looking to capture their family's legacy, how can
Yes.
they get in touch with you?
They can give me a call. I have a website that is called fondreflectionsvideo.com.
Okay.
And on that website, I have put in a half a dozen video clips of various interviews that I've done, and they can go there, or they can send me an email. It's ffarmer@fondreflectionsvideo.com, and or they can give me a call at 858-750-5330. So
Awesome.
come get me.
Fred Farmer, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. This has been a lot of fun, bud.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the opportunity.
Can I ask you a question? Did you know that there's a technology that uses sound waves that'll tell your brain what to do? There literally is. It's called newcalm.com. It can tell your brain to heal, tell your brain to sleep, tell your brain to do all kinds of things. It can get you fired up. It can be a pre-workout. Newcalm.com. And the promo code is Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at the Mike Litton Experience.